Yeah, they'll work it up there too. The enemy spot like this.
Check the time for me, please. Time. Don't you ever do that again.
10:30, Mr. Harley.
Very good.
Quite a large group of children coming down the path, Mr. Hartley. Must be on the women's schedule.
All the children at the fort. Yeah, can't get a good straight sighting with it.
You will stop? No, go on now. Mama doesn't want to waste all that family. Stand behind it and put your hand on it like you're going to get up there by it. Yeah, right up. Otherwise, you know. Dead or not. Just leave it open, Jeff.
Nation here. He's a man by the name of Major Lawrence Tower, and he's the narrator for the film up in the History Center. Now, he's in charge of dealing with the Indians in this area, and that is two main tribes or groups of Indians. In the south side of the fort and in southern Minnesota, you have the Sioux or the Dakota Indians, one being a white man's term, one being the Indian term. And on the north side of the fort, you have the Chippewa or the Ojibwe Indians, again, two names of the same group of Indians. Now, these two Indians don't get along very well. Are you two way back sisters there? Do you get along most of the time, or do you fight a little bit? Fight once in a while? Well, you're probably quite a bit like the Indians in this area a bit, because the Indians do fight quite a bit. And as a matter of fact, we're here to try to keep peace between the Indians, keep them from actually starting a war. Now, the main reason why we don't want them to start a war is because of the fur trade, and that's the second main reason why we're here. Now, it's hard for us in 1984 to imagine how big the fur trade is, but in 1827, it's one of the United States' largest industries. As a matter of fact, America's first millionaire, being a man by the name of John Jacob Astor, made his money in the fur trade, and and one of his largest fur trading posts is located directly across the river in where Mendota is today. So as you can tell, fur trade is a very big business. And we're here to regulate the fur trade. That is to keep the traders from selling whiskey to the Indians and to keep the traders respecting all of the Indian rights and so on. Now, the third main reason why we're here is to protect the outer frontier. Now, again, it's hard for us to imagine this as being the outer frontier, but in 1827 and even on into the 1830s, there is nothing farther west of here. This is the farthest point that man has really gone. The only thing that is farther west of here are the trails that Lewis and Clark originally explored. Now, as a result, we're here to make sure that the British and French don't infringe upon them from the United States lands. Now, it's hard to think that there's a great deal of British influence here in 1827, but if you imagine when this post was built in 1820, it was only 8 years after the War of 1812 when we finally got rid of the British. Now, all the way up until the War of 1812 and even afterward, the British still controlled this area, and they reaped all the benefits from the fur trade, and the French before the British. So we're here to make sure that only United States citizens are engaged in the fur trade. The United States government, being basically greedy, wants to make sure that the United States citizens are the ones that are going to be gaining all the profits from the fur trade. Now, do you folks have any questions at all about the whole site or anything? We give you a very brief history here, and there's no type of cue cards behind me. If you have any specific questions or interests, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you. Yes, ma'am?
How long has it taken to restore it?
Original restoration started in 1964, and they basically are just completing right around now. Now, you can almost compare that to what it took Colonel Snelling to build this fort. If you imagine the original scope for building this post, Colonel Snelling came up here in 1820 with only crude hand tools and a group of about 300 soldiers, and had to build a post out of that. Now, what that meant was quarrying all of the stone, making all of the bricks in the area, as well as cutting down all the timbers and lumbering them in Minnesota's first sawmill, located at St. Anthony Falls. So if any of you folks are from Minneapolis, you probably have your original roots here at Fort Snelling, since Minneapolis did grow up around the Fort St. Anthony, where the soldiers were stationed. Now, it's taken Minnesota Historical Society since 1964 until basically last year to complete the full site here, and they're still doing some touch-up works, and that's with every modern hand tool and everything else. So you probably could argue that's progress, but it does tell you how much work it did take Colonel Snelling to originally build this full site. Any other questions, no?
This building just off to the left here had white powder in it. Was that?
Right, that's called the lime storage shed, and what's in there is white lime. What it is just limestone that's baked in a kiln, and the white lime is used for making whitewash as well as for making mortar. And about the only difference between the two is with the mortar you add sand to it. Any other questions, no? Well, if folks want to step outside, I'll tell you a little about the uniforms we've seen here today. For the dress. Now, the reason that I am wearing this uniform is that I'm on guard duty, and that this is the uniform that we would wear into battle. Now, it probably looks a little bit like what you might expect a British or a French uniform to look like of the period, and that's with good reason. The reason is that this is a copy of what the original French uniform looked like, and it was a copy that the American Army had. And the reason is that most all of our uniforms, as well as all of our drill tactics, all come from the French. Now, the entire idea is to make me look a little bit more fearsome. Could you folks please? We're trying to conduct a tour over here, and it's really difficult to see with the Swedes come on. See if that helps a bit. The entire idea, as I was saying before, is to make me look a little bit more fearsome, and I hope you're not laughing that that's not possible, sir. What you do is you put epaulets on my shoulders, make my shoulders look a little bit wider. Put a tall Velcro on my head, makes me look a little bit taller. Now, if that doesn't make me a good enough target, put a bright red plume that not only makes me look fearsome, but also denotes the company that I'm in, that being Company A. Now, the other uniforms you'll be seeing around here today, you can see some of those men cutting wood right over there. That's the daily duty or the fatigue uniform. Now, that's for any type of things such as tending the 400 acres of company fields we have outside of here, tending any of the stations within the fort, that is the blacksmith shop, the carpenter shop, and so on. Any other duties that are not guard duty or duty under arms, you'll see men in those kind of uniforms. Any questions about the uniforms or anything else so far? Well, if you follow me, we'll proceed up towards the inside of the round tower, and it'll also be a lot cooler inside there as well. All the cannonballs are kept inside the commissary, being that long low building right down there. Inside the guardhouse, you'll not only find the stockade, but you'll also find inside of that stockade 2 more darker cells that are in there. And those are called the black holes, or the solitary confinement cells. Now, you could be placed in there for up to 90 days according to Army regulations. And the only time those doors are opened up is at 12 o'clock midnight, at which time you're fed bread and water. So even when the doors are opened up, it's dark outside. I do trust that all of you will behave yourselves while you're on there. According to the suggested tour plan, I'm supposed to be standing outside describing the outside of the round tower to you, but I thought we'd come in here for probably good reason. Now, the building that you're in here is understandably called the Round Tower, and it's one of the 3 original buildings left standing from the fort site. Now, the other 2 buildings are the Commandant's House and the Hexagonal Tower. Now, every other building has been completely rebuilt since 1964 by the Minnesota Historical Society, so as you can tell, there has been extensive restoration. Now, since this is one of the original buildings, it is also the oldest standing stone structure in the state of Minnesota, for any of you who are trivia buffs. Now, there is a couple of reasons why the Round Tower here is a bit curious. If you take a look towards these gun portals here, they face towards the inside of the camp. Now, that wouldn't seem to make much sense, because you'd figure that you'd always be firing outside the camp at an enemy that would be approaching. Well, the idea is that the Round Tower is here is used as much for defense as it is for offense. That is, if the fort was ever overrun, you've got Indians or French or British or anyone else that want to attack this post inside the camp. What you could do is you could shut those doors right there, and you could also batten down the hatches on top of the Round Tower. This then could be the place of your last great defense. You can fire out at an enemy from any direction. Now, you also have this very awkward wooden step here that I told you folks to be careful as you're walking in here. Now, you figure that the men would be tripping over this during the heat of battle. Well, again, this is for safety. Now, I'm standing here and reloading my musket, which takes a good bit into there, about 15 seconds. It takes me about 20 seconds. I'm most likely going to be shot. Anyone that would want to attack the Round Tower wouldn't want to fire into a 5-foot thick stone exterior wall. They'd want to fire right through these gun portals. Whereas if I step down here and reload my musket, any musket balls that travel in are most likely going to come over my head, maybe kill someone standing behind me, but I'll be an awful lot safer. I'll be able to step right up here and then fire the muskets. Now, if you don't think that would help very much, you must consider that the average height in 1827 of the men of this garrison is right around 5.5 feet. So I'm about 3 to 4 inches tall for the period. You, sir, standing in the doorway would probably be considered a freak of nature. Folks have any questions about the Round Tower or anything else? Well, we'll step up to the top and I'll point out the different buildings that you'll be seeing here today. Look like if you're standing up here in 1827. Now, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to block out pretty much everything you see. You're going to have to get rid of the Mendota Bridge. Of course, that's not there. You're going to have to get rid of downtown St. Paul in that direction. I've never heard of it other than it being a patron saint. You also have to get rid of downtown Minneapolis, which you see a very pretty view right down there. It comes from a Greek word. Sounds like Greek to me. I've never heard of it. As a matter of fact, you'll have to pretty much get rid of every tree you see in sight as well. Now, if any of you have seen the display up in the History Center, you probably saw the views from the Round Tower, and you probably noticed that most of the areas in those pictures were all plains. And as a matter of fact, they are. For this post, you really will not be able to see any type of trees or many other vegetation other than wild prairie grasses. And the reason is that in 1827, this area is all prairie, and the closest place for us to get trees and wood to get for this garrison is about 40 miles north of here, right around where Anoka is today. And that's where all of our building wood, as well as all of our firewood, is cut. It's cut up there, then floated down the Mississippi to our sawmills at St. Anthony Falls. Now, the only vegetation that you'll find other than the wild prairie grasses are about 400 acres of company fields located directly west of here, right around where the Fort Snelling polo grounds are today. Sir, could you please step beyond that barricade there? I don't want anyone falling off the Round Tower here. Thank you. We have those 400 acres of company fields to bring the men of this garrison a few fresh foods. Now, if we had to live off of salt pork and beans, which are about the only type of foods that could be imported from St. Louis without them spoiling, the men here would not be very healthy. But with those fields, along with good water, as well as being away from any chances for vice out in the outer frontier here, we are the second healthiest post in the United States Army throughout 1820s and the 1830s. Now, the only post that is healthier than Fort Snelling during that period is West Point, New York, of course, the officers' training ground. Now, if you talk to an officer will say, well, West Point is the officers' training ground, they're a little bit better bred, they're healthier to begin with, and that's why West Point is healthier. If you talk to a private such as myself, I'll say, well, West Point is all officers, and officers never do any work anyway, so they never get sick. So it probably depends upon why you might think that West Point is healthier. Now, if you take a look down here, I can point out the different buildings that you'll be seeing here today. Right down below us is the powder magazine, a building I had last described to you. Over on the left-hand side of that is the gun storage shed. It's a smaller wood frame building. It's where we keep all the artillery pieces that we use here at the fort. Inside that smaller building with the stone fireplace is the sutler store. Now, sutler is an Army term. It means pretty much the same as post exchange or even a general store. Inside there, you can purchase 1827 type goods. The only thing that is not 1827 about the goods, I'm afraid, is the price. You have to pay a 1984 price for everything you buy in the sutler store. In addition, since we have many youngins, we have CANDY of the rock and horehound type. Inside the short barracks is a building with the smoke coming out there and all the way down. It is a mock-up of what the garrison looked like, or what our living quarters looked like in the 1820s. Inside there, you'll find two names on a bunk. That doesn't mean two men sleep in there in rotation. That means two men sleep in each bunk at the same time. As you can tell, it's very close quarters. Now, in addition, since I see some smoke coming out right now, there are company kitchens located underneath there, and I believe they're cooking some soup or stew or something like that. It's the first cellar door that you find open, and you want to try to take a look at that if you have time, and if you can stand the smoke inside there as well. That long white building is named in the Army's infinite wisdom the Long Barracks. I don't think the Army presumes too much intelligence on the part of their privates. This private in front of you is probably an indication of that. Inside the Long Barracks, you'll be able to see a museum display about what garrison life is like in the 1820s, all the way through the Civil War, of which it follows this garrison. Now, the building right between those two barracks, you see right along the wall here, is the hexagonal tower. This fort never was attacked. I hate to disappoint anyone, but Fort Snelling never fired a shot in anger, and the only shots that you will find fired here are shots that you'll find during the musket firing and cannon firing demonstrations today. Now, that building directly across the parade ground with the front doors open is the Commandant's house. It is residence of Colonel Snelling and his family. Now, I've never been in there being a private, but I hear it's very pretty. You want to also be sure that you go out the back door and down the stairs, because underneath there are kitchens for the Snellings as well as regimental headquarters. And it seems that they're cooking something in the kitchens. Maybe you can try to persuade the housekeeper to give you a taste of what it is. On the right-hand side of the Commandant's house, the building with the 5 red stone fireplaces, is the officers' quarters. It's the place that understandably houses our officers. Now, to give you an idea of the difference in life between the two groups, inside officers' quarters you have 12 men and their families that live there. Inside the long barracks you have 150 enlisted men. Inside the short barracks 100 enlisted men. As you can tell, there is a great deal of difference between the lives of the two people. On this side of officers' quarters, the building with the 5 white stone fireplaces, is the hospital. It serves as the only hospital in the Minnesota area for over 20 years, and it is the only hospital between here and St. Louis throughout the 1820s and 30s. As a result, if you folks are in need of medical care, for instance, you need between 8 and 16 ounces of blood let out of you, an amputation or blistering, that is the place to go to. On this side of the hospital is the schoolhouse, place where most of us began our tour. It is the first school in Minnesota, as well as the first church congregation in Minnesota. The right-hand side of that is the guardhouse, a building I had also described to you. On the other side of the admissions gate, the building with the smaller stone fireplaces, is the shops building. It's where we have all of the craftsmen here for the fort. Now, if we had to wait for anything we needed to be made or to be repaired in St. Louis, we wouldn't get much work done. So we have those craftsmen down there. And we have a blacksmith, a carpenter, a harness maker, as well as a baker down there. It seems like there's some smoke coming out of the bake shop, so if you want to try our bread, you can go down there. Do be careful, it is a very hearty crust. I don't want you to drop it on your toe. Directly down this road here, you'll find the commissary. It's that long, low building. It appears to be very small, but it's actually the largest building on the fort site. It goes 4 stories all the way down the river bank. And the idea is that instead of bringing all the items we need all the way up the river bank, you only have to bring them up halfway, load them into the 4th floor of the commissary, being right down by the ground, and then you bring them up a lift in the middle of the building. Now, the only problem with that design is that rainwater tends to run off the parade ground, which is much higher, either seeps into the commissary or runs right through the front door, makes the bottom 2 floors like an indoor duck pond. As a result, the only things the Army stores down there is things it doesn't care if it's water in, such as its whiskey. Now, the building between the commissary and the shops building, right along this wall, you'll find the hexagonal tower, 6 sides, as opposed to the pentagonal tower, now that I tried to clear that up so I can clear it up for myself. The hexagonal tower is probably the most authentic building on the fort side, and as I said before, one of the 3 original buildings left from the fort side. The final building that I'll point out to you is a semicircular tower. It's located right behind the Commandant's house. Now, from the semicircular tower, you can get a very excellent view of the meeting of the two rivers. That being the Minnesota River, which runs underneath the non-existent Mendota Bridge, called the St. Peter's River in 1827, as well as the Mississippi River, which flows past non-existent downtown Minneapolis. Now, the two rivers meet at a point right behind the Commandant's house, and that point is very important. From that point, you can control the upper Midwest and upper Northwest of the United States, because anything that passes into that area has to pass by a river, and it has to pass by that point, which is the reason why this fort is so strategic and why this area is so strategic. I have a couple other announcements before we conclude here. There are restrooms located right behind the short barracks, the second cellar door you'll find open, as well as right behind the officers' quarters, the third door down on your left. Now there is no smoking. We can try some good grammar here. There is no smoking allowed here on the fort site. All the buildings are made out of stone, but there's quite a bit of wood. We don't want them to go up. If you ever have any questions, ask someone in the costumes. That's why you're here. At 11:30, there's going to be a musket firing demonstration, and if you're still about at 1 o'clock, there's going to be a cannon firing demonstration. Enjoy your stay. If you enjoyed the tour, my name is Private Springer. Of course, if you didn't, my name is Private Carnes. Thank you all very much.
How are y'all doing?
All right.
Well, that's good. It's good to hear. This is Laundress's quarters.
We'll see you.
All right, goodbye now, sir. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Of course, he's just talking real loud and jibber jabber. This is a home for two families in here. Every family gets one bunk. And I live here with my husband, who's a corporal, just got promoted, and then I also have two little boys. And the McMillans live here, and they have two children as well. Mrs. McMillan and myself wash clothes for the men in Company A. That's why we're out here in the frontier. I get paid 50 cents a month from each man. I get $8 a month. Of course, I wash for 17 men. My husband's the extra. Of course, he won't pay me, and I give him all my money anyhow, so. You have any questions about anything?
You have this side and then they have that
No,
side?
no, we all have this one room here.
This one room together,
That's right.
family of bunk. So 4 into a bunk.
What happens if they had more than 2 kids?
Well, depends on how big the kids are. Usually you can fit them all up on top there. But if you've got more than they can fit up there, if they start arguing a lot, like my two boys are starting to do that, you just make another straw tick for them and have them go and sleep on the floor. And that's not so bad, because during the wintertime they're sleeping by the fireplace and it keeps them nice and warm. I'm going to be making a pot pie here. I've got carrots and onions and cabbage in here. And then cutting up my meat that I'll boil. And then I'll put it all in. I've got a crust that's all mixed up right here, and I'll putting it in this pan here. And then I'll cook it in my Dutch oven, which is this kettle right here. And what you do is get some nice good hot coals in there, which that's why I have a big fire going. And you put coals around the top here and around the side. And inside there you can see there's rocks, and you put your pan or whatever you're cooking right on top of the rocks here. And that'll keep whatever you're cooking heat up, will make sure it doesn't burn on the bottom, and also makes the air circulate all real even around the whole thing. Pot pie like this will take about a half hour to do. Cookies take about 10 minutes. Pies take the same amount of time as one of these fruit pies. So. Any questions about anything?
Does each woman do their own cooking or you trade off?
Well, since today I'm up here, Mrs. McMillan is down washing clothes and wandering around doing mending and things like that. I'll do all the cooking. She does all the washing she needs to do today. Tomorrow we'll switch. A lot easier that way. Then you don't have to have two families in here cooking at the same time. Fireplace isn't that big. You will come in, Mr. Phelps?
Still kind of smoky down there.
Oh, all right. Well, I suppose you can have them sit down up here if you'd like. You'd like some water? We got some water over there.
Well, I was looking for my cup is what I was looking for.
Why don't you keep your cup up here?
It's the one I got you the vinegar in.
Oh. Suppose I could just this.
I gotta get me a fire like that. Gotta get some bigger flames.
You can't get yours real small in?
Yeah. I ain't worried about it, I can fix it. I just knock it all down and get the pot over it.
Oh. Just as long as you get it done by the time the sergeant say you're supposed to be eating. Gross.
Did you enlist for a period of time then,
A
or
full 5 years now.
full 5 years? At how much salary then did you?
I'm still a private. I've been drawing $5 a month. That's, actually, I think I can say it. That's near a lie. That's what they tell you you're making. But they take $4, they leave you with $4.50. They take 50 cents to pay your laundress. Indeed, my laundress does do perhaps a fair job. This is just fresh out of the laundry. But they take that 50 cents away from you every payday. You don't even see it, so they might as well call it $4.50. Of course, I don't have to pay anything to eat, nothing for clothes, nothing for sleeping either. But still, that's not enough money to be able to really save any of it. I chew most of that during the course of a month as it is.
So you haven't saved anything in that 4 years?
Oh, no, sir. I don't really have to. The government's going to be paying me near $30 to get back to Boston, and that's where I enlisted. Of course, I don't have to go back to Boston, but
You can drink it up right here.
that may be a possibility, sir. I enlisted the first day of January 1823. With the minimum guardhouse time that I've spent, I'll be coming out in January of 28. And from this quarter, sir, it's rather difficult to get places in January.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you say 2 to a bunk, is that, did I understand that correctly, or what?
Correct, ma'am. It is fairly spacious sleeping accommodation. A lot better than the rendezvous where I trained in. They had a pallet about the size of this table and long enough to accommodate a man lying down. The 12 men of the squad were to sleep to that. That wasn't so bad during the winter. We were generally warm. But, this is a fairly spacious arrangement.
Have you been away from this fort in the time you've been here?
Spent some time down at Fort Crawford, ma'am, until they closed it down. As it stands, it must have been a foolish thing to do. We've got companies of men in the processing down there now. Of course, you've heard of the trouble we've had with the Indians down to the south of us.
Now, that's the Sioux Indians?
The Winnebagoes, indeed. There's been a little bit of murder happening down there over this past winter. And, well, they shot up a keel boat pretty fair. Old Snag, a man of the river for a good number of years, and a gentleman of my acquaintance, from what I hear, is a dead man this day. So the colonel, as soon as he discovered this, took some companies of men and headed downriver. I don't think the Winnebagoes will stand a chance of being able to do anything. We've got the 1st Infantry down at Jefferson Barracks. I reckon they'd be close to 400 men in strength. Ought to be 500, but then what units at full strength? Hard to find fools like myself and Reichel here to enlist.
Jefferson Barracks, you're saying Missouri?
Yes,
No.
indeed, ma'am.
Okay.
Just a little ways north of St. Louis.
Yeah. And you'll be part of the musket, that's the next thing that you...
I'm afraid drill is one of the constant things about garrison routine, ma'am. I'm guaranteed of being on drill
Once a day, or
several times per day. Unless, of course, I get lucky and get sent someplace like the gardens. That's dismal work, especially when the birds come. Well, they can be pretty thick. There's many a time I've knocked down a good several dozen with my hoe.
Is that right?
Between them and the locusts, it's a wonder we sometimes have any food coming out of the gardens.
And how many are on this fort at this particular time we're talking about?
We don't have much more than 150 here now, ma'am. We sent some companies, as I mentioned, down the river. Before that happened, we had over 300 men here. Indeed, all but 2 companies of the 5th Infantry actually still being down a little ways further south of Fort Crawford.
I've read something about that this wasn't all dismal times, that there were parties and that sort of thing on the grounds. Were you a part of those?
Of some evenings, the colonel will allow the Sutler's store to be open late. The musicians will play for us. There'll be dances. Of course, there's not enough lady folk to go around, but I don't mind. I'll dance with anyone who'll dance with me. Some pleasant music, too. I might have many a thing to say hard against the Irish. What good American doesn't? But they do have pleasant music, and I do find it quite entertaining to try and dance to.
Good. Thank you very much.
Pleasure talking with you, ma'am. Enjoy the day.
Have you ever heard of eating a ostrich? Cantaloupe. There's credit. How long have you been here? Too happy so far, man. 6 months of our tank destroyed a pair of army cantaloupe. Light it in my eye. Think that takes care of senior law for 375 years. You got some rust on your lock plate, you got rust on your hammer, you got rust on your split. You got rust on the barrel. These are sockets, you see. You got rust on your ramrod. You got rust on your lock plate, rust on your hammer, rust on your barrel bands, rust on your barrel, rust in your socket. You got filth down the barrel. Tell me, gentlemen,
cold here.
How's the water? Oh, isn't that pretty? That's the French River, I think. French River.
barely see land over there.
Reduces the huge rocks of taconite into smaller and smaller particles until they are ground or flat, then waters them. Now magnetic separators are able to draw ore away from the wastewater. The powder is formed into marble-sized pellets, which are then baked hard in a furnace at 2400 degrees Fahrenheit. The cured taconite pellets are formed